They are three of the most successful showrunners working in television today, and they are here at South by for the premiere of their new Netflix series called Three Body Problem. Please welcome David Benioff, Dan Weiss, and Alexander Wu to the studio. How are we doing, guys?
Doing really good.
It's fantastic.
Thank you for having us.
I feel like,
You're a reflective headset goofy today.
it's, I'm gonna change my handle on TikTok and everything just to that, just for you. Does it sound good? All right, so I saw you guys at the red carpet for Three Body Problem. We watched the first episode. Amazing. It's so much mystery, it's so much things going on, and I'm very curious to see where the rest of the series is going to go. David, I heard you just go, it gets good. I believe it, blinking lights.
I just feel like if we can just get the audience to episode 5, we got them. We've got them hooked.
I mean, you already got me hooked on
All
episode
right,
1.
that's
So
good to know.
Episode 5 just tells me things are really going to kick off and go nuts.
Things are ramping up, yeah.
Well, I just want to talk to you about this film because this series because there's so much that goes into it. There's sci-fi, there's it almost feels, I want to say supernatural because there's a thing going on with science, right? And when you throw science out the window, things tend to get well, how does the universe work? But there's so many different concepts in it. If you was to explain just the plot of Three Body Problem for the people at home, how would you describe it?
I always get
Laugh.
the sense
We always look at Alex because he's the best at this.
at some point, like the first time it was asked, I was put on the spot and I just blurted something out that had sounded good enough that we just keep using it. No, I think Three Body Problem is the story of humanity from the point of first contact with an alien civilization all the way to the end of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
That's it. Wow, you got it in one blurb too. Can we get
fewest
that
possible
quick?
words?
There it is. There's like you said, you try to blurt something out, and now you're just kind of I got this down, pack, easy. So David and Dan, you guys have come off a hugely indie shoestring budget of a series called Game of Thrones. If you heard about it, cool. So what was it like? What is it like, kind of tackling this story? What drew you into that?
I mean, on some level, it was. What drew us into it is how different it was from Game of Thrones, but how similar the feeling was that we got reading Thrones books, which was just, I love this genre, but I've never seen this genre done this way before. So it was kind of it had nothing to do with Thrones. We definitely wanted to step away. We loved that experience, but 13 years in the mud, trying not to get stepped on by horses that was enough of that. So we kind of wanted to move on from that, and we knew that science fiction, kind of broadly speaking, was the right place to be. But we didn't know what we wanted to do. And reading these books, it had those moments, moment after moment after moment, of those things that made your eyes kind of pop out of your head, made you go back and read it again to make sure you got it right. And they're just things that you had to try to put on screen because they were just so mind-blowing. They were so unlike anything you'd ever seen before. So it was that. The guy's brain is so much more advanced and so much different from anybody else's brain out there. That the guy being Cixin Liu, the author of the books, that we had to go for it.
That's incredible. Now, the thing that really interests me in the research of this is that Netflix kind of approached you guys with this and was just kind of use the books as reference. You know what I'm saying? They really wanted to kind of make it almost its own thing while still being a little bit truthful. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the things that made you say, yeah, we have the leeway to kind of do our own thing, but what was something that made you say we have to adapt this?
Well, on one very basic level, we got the rights to do the English language adaptation. So the books, are set almost entirely in China. All the characters are Chinese, and there is a Chinese language adaptation that's already been made. So, which is interesting. I think if you're a professor, I don't know if they teach courses in adaptation, television adaptation. I hope not. I hope my kids don't take classes. But if they did, it would be interesting because I don't think that often in history has there been a time where simultaneously 2 shows come out. One is very faithful to the books and in the original language, and then there's ours, which is mostly in English. There's some Chinese, but it's mostly in English, and it's less faithful. But Alex was talking yesterday about how what he's going for is to be true to the spirit of the book and to try to give to the audience the same feeling that we had when we're reading the books. And I think that's really accurate. I think that gets to the heart of it, which is, you know, the first scene of the show is very similar to the first scene of the novel, and the last scene of the season is very similar to the last scene. In between, there's all sorts of deviations, all sorts of things. We brought in some stuff from book 2, we brought in stuff from book 3. There's some stuff we invented, but at the end, like, we're trying to be true to Cixin Liu's vision and to that, what he made us feel, which was, wow, the universe is a lot bigger than we thought about before. We're almost certainly not alone in the universe, and that might not be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, as someone who like was not privy to the books before, like finding out about this, hearing that I don't know if you've talked to the author about it, and you know, I'm assuming you have. Like, what was it like, kind of like getting the green light from him, like to like kind of like go nuts with it and like create that different version? That's, you know, because most people are really close to their own source material, but you guys got the green light.
We approach it with a bit of apprehension because you don't know, how they might feel about someone adapting their source material. So this was during the pandemic, so we weren't able to meet face to face. So we did it over Zoom, and he was in China. And the first thing I remember actually is how deep his voice was, which was very strange. You know, you'd be talking to him, almost like those Tuvan throat singers, like my goodness. But the first thing he said, first thing out of his mouth was he was a huge fan of Game of Thrones, which was the way, like, okay, you know, he knows the people who are going to be adapting this, and that he had a level of trust, and he understood that the television medium was fundamentally different from the novel medium, and you're going to have to make some changes. You're going to have to make some adjustments for the TV series to feel the same way as the book feels. And he said some things that preemptively were things we had already been talking about and thinking about. Said some of those characters that were all men in my books are probably going to be better off being female in your books, and you're probably going to have to globalize the show if you're doing it in English. You know, so there's a lot of things he had already thought. And then we thought, oh, okay, he gets it. And that felt really, really good to hear that from him.
So now I really want to like dive into you, because you said that he was fans of Game of Thrones. Like, I'm sure, you know, True Blood also came into the conversation as well, which you were a showrunner of, and I'm a True Blood super fan. Like, I watched it a couple times, man.
I don't know if True Blood made its way to China in quite the same way. I don't know how that would have gone over.
I mean, you know, set in the Deep South, so like, you know, I don't know how much they watch Deep South content over there. But as a fan of that, like, you know very well, like the transition from book to the screen can be like very, very difficult. So like getting like this blessing and like, you know, what's the key to like a successful adaptation in your eyes?
I go back to the feeling of it. It's the spirit of it, and you know, when we read those books, there was this feeling of awe and wonderment, and also always being on the wrong foot. You never knew. Like, it starts off as like what you saw last night. You know, it starts off as historical fiction, and then there's a murder mystery, and then wait, are we going to science fiction? You know, and you know, David has described, you know, when you open the book, you look at the cover and you say, okay, this is science fiction. Then you go quite some time, it's like, wait, where's the science fiction? And you know, and how's this going to lead into science fiction? And that was all part of the fun of it, really. It's like how all these pieces of the mystery fit together, how that headset, you know, works in with the rest of this story, and it comes together in a really satisfying way. So even if you don't take every single moment from the books to translate, you still need to have you feel the same way as when you read the books.
Yeah. Well, you want to know, like I'm so glad you're describing this, because you want to know what my favorite like element of that first episode is the idea that science as we know it is over. Like, you know, it's just gone. And I never fathomed that idea of, you know, science is supposed to be law. It's supposed to be like what it is, and anything else is just like magic, fairy tales. And now that it's gone, I was like, well, what does that do for like our everyday life, right? Does high school say, oh, let's just get rid of this science class until we figure it out, you know?
Free period.
The free period, it's a free period, you know? And then teachers just go home and they have a drink and ponder the existence of the universe. But there's a lot of like high level physics like woven into this. Like, you talk about like taking the intellectual and like making it visual and kind of like diving headfirst into that.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. The thing about a book is you can read something that goes pretty in-depth into the science, and then you can stop and you can think about it. You can go look up a word if you don't know what that word means. You don't want people to be doing that when they're watching your TV show. So it was really one of the challenges we faced in translating from book to screen was making sure that the scientific ideas were not just accessible to people, but like intriguing and exciting to people, and without bogging down in things that would make them, it would slow the roll of the show and make them stop, because you don't want people to stop watching your show. So we were very lucky. We had, it might be shocking, none of us are scientists. But we know some. And so we begged them to come and join us. Babak Ferdowsi, who works for Jet Propulsion Laboratories, literal rocket scientist, and Matthew Kenzie is a theoretical particle physicist, rather, in England, whose father was a cinematographer on Thrones, and so we had these guys come in, explain to us some of the concepts to make sure we understood what we were talking about, and explain to the cast. So when they were playing scientists, they had some interaction with a real scientist, and maybe most importantly, we watched them explain to other people really difficult ideas in a really kind of quick, succinct, punchy, sharp way. And they kind of helped teach us how to explain these ideas to everybody else by explaining them to us, if that makes any sense. So we were very lucky to have them involved. And yeah, it's ideally we want people to engage with that stuff, and we want them to do it in a way that makes the show more exciting, not less.
Yo, it's so funny that you like say that, you know, you had literal like scientists and everything kind of teach you everything. And my next question was going to be, was it difficult to understand it? But as Einstein said, or was it Einstein? It was some scientist who said if you can't explain it simply, then like don't explain it at all. And like you should be able to take like a big concept and say this is what it is. So that's very, very interesting. There are a lot of like complicated, highly technical scenes in Three Body Problem. Like, do you have like a favorite that you want to expand on?
The Judgment Day sequence in episode 5. I don't know if you've gotten that far.
I haven't gotten that far yet.
So
but
yeah,
you were talking about it a little bit. I was like, ooh.
I don't know if spoiler. Is this coming out before the show?
It's coming out now.
It's coming out now.
Yeah, don't worry. If you don't want to spoil it, we don't do spoilers.
I would just say it's a big sequence, and it took a lot of, you know, the joy of, we all come from writing in other formats, right? Alex was a playwright, and we wrote novels, and those are very solitary endeavors. And, you know, I guess playwright, once you get to the actual staging of a play, it's not. But making a TV show is a collaboration, and the bigger the sequence, so whether it was a big battle scene in Game of Thrones or this scene I'm talking about that I'm not going to spoil in episode 5, it was a huge, huge deal that involved all departments coming together. And we were lucky we had a great director, Minky Spyro, who is, you know, just nonstop worker. I mean, really, it ends up just being the work, you know, it's the prep work. And Bernie Caulfield, who's our physical producer, who's I think the best in the business, but you know that when you're doing one of these big sequences, it means there are going to be endless meetings. There's people sitting around a room from every single department talking about how we're going to make this work for props, for production design, for the visual effects team.
Right,
you know,
right.
Later on, you get the sound team coming in and working on it. You get Ramin Javadi, our genius composer, coming.
This is all for one sequence.
It's all for one sequence, and the more complex the sequence, the more meetings you have, and the more. So it's almost like the more exciting a sequence ends up being on screen, the more boring it is to make.
Every time you write the sentence 10,000 warriors charge, there are like 50 people who are just like, oh.
I can imagine. I mean, you know, going back to Game of Thrones, thinking about the Battle of the Bastards, I was like, this, and those were real men too, as I imagine.
Those
like,
are real horses.
Like,
so yeah, our horse mistress, Camilla Napru, was at the premiere last night, and those are all real horses, and she is so good at her job, and her stunt men and women were so good at their jobs that they could actually safely charge at Kit Harington, you know, and they don't actually hit them obviously, but they're coming close enough that when you're watching it, it's scary, and the camera makes it look like they're coming even closer. So yeah, that stuff was real.
I like to recreate that scene in my bedroom sometimes. You know, it's such a good looking shot. But it's amazing how like all these things come together just for one scene. It speaks to the collaborative effort of like creating something like
no
this.
doubt.
It's hard to get a horse in your bedroom.
Honestly, I could talk about this all day, and I could talk about Three Body Problem all day. It's so many interesting ideas, and it's amazing. And thank you so much for being at the South by Southwest studio. This is amazing. We should do this a third time, so it's like a third time's the charm type of thing.
Yeah,
Right? Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, everybody. Three Body Problem. Problem premieres on Netflix March 21st. I'm your host, Juju Green. Thank you so much for watching. And you can catch us on YouTube at youtube.com/SXSW. I got my headset on.
You pull it off. It looks good.
Right?
Yeah, man.
You know, it's